Hi, I'm Sarah Trott, and welcome to the Fourth Trimester Podcast. I'm a new mama, and this podcast is all about postpartum care for the first few months following birth, the time period also known as the fourth trimester. My postpartum doula, Esther Gallagher, is my co-host. She's a mother, grandmother, perinatal educator, birth and postpartum care provider. Fourth trimester care, our topic, is about the practical, emotional, and social support parents and baby require. And importantly, it helps set the tone for the continuing journey of parenting. Hi, this is Sarah Trott, and welcome back to the Fourth Trimester Podcast. I'm here with a special guest today, Sarah Healy, and we are going to talk about baby sleep training, ways to make sleep easier and smoother for the entire family, not just baby. This is all about family sleep, and I want to talk a little bit about why it's so important. Sleep is incredibly important physically as well as emotionally. So we're going to dive deep into all aspects of this. And I'm so excited to have Sarah on the program. I've wanted her on the show for a while. And this episode has been long time in the works. So I wanted to turn it over to you, Sarah, and ask you to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Sarah, for having me. It's one of my favorite things to talk about is sleep. So officially, I'm a baby sleep specialist. I'm an infant sleep consultant, baby sleep consultant. I work with families privately and I teach. And so that's my official role. How I got into it was that I fell in love with birth work. I was a birth doula for many, many years and loved that, loved watching the beginning of a family and that rite of passage that happens. And then I started working also as a postpartum doula. And then I began to work as an overnight doula. So I was working with families in the whole spectrum. And then I got my master's in psychology. I decided to go back to school and study this work with an emphasis on family systems. And so I thought I knew everything. I got my massage certification for pregnant women. Like I was just all about the birth world and the motherhood world. And then I had my firstborn, Mira, 17 years ago. And she was highly alert, highly sensitive, very tuned in to everything around her. And as a result, it was really challenging to get her to go to sleep. And so the story I tell is we had this big giant birth ball. It's a purple birth ball, giant. And we would bounce up and down on the birth ball with her upright, kind of bouncing her up and down while she was swaddled up until she would fall asleep. And so sometimes that was 20 minutes, sometimes that was 40 minutes. And we get her sound asleep, and then we'd carefully transfer her into her sleep space like she was a little baby bomb. We'd crawl out of the room, and then 20 minutes later, she would wake up. And that was every day, for every nap. That was every night at bedtime and throughout the night. And it was exhausting. And I fell into postpartum anxiety. I didn't know that's what it was called, but I just found myself not being able to sit still and feeling very restless and very anxious. And that was Mira. And then her sister Luca was born 3 years later, and Luca had undiagnosed reflux, and I had undiagnosed low milk supply. And so Luca would literally scream all day in pain, upright in a carrier on me. And I would try to feed her, and I didn't know I didn't have any milk. She was really hungry. And then she would sleep at night, but probably because she was just so tired. And so between both babies, I sort of got the mixed plate of many of the things that parents face. And I decided to get educated about what is this? Because I would scroll and read and ask friends, and nothing would answer the questions I had about my babies. I was very frustrating. And so I reached out to a colleague at the time who was also trained in this. And her name is Dr. Angelique Millette. She's wonderful. And she spent a year, I did an internship for a year. And what I love about her approach is that it's evidence-based and it's research-based and it's holistic. So we look at the entire family unit, all the factors that go into it to determine how to support a family with their sleep goals. And so that's a little bit about me and my background. I sort of fell into it from my own desperation and have been doing it ever since for 15 years now. And I absolutely love it. So that's a little bit about my story.
Yeah,
So,
well, we've had Angelique Millette on our program several times. She has
yeah,
her PhD and she's dedicated her career to healthy family sleep. So we're a big fan of hers as well as yours.
yeah,
So, given your
yeah.
personal experience, you refocused your passion really around
Hmm.
family sleep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I when I began doing this, and ever since I've been doing it, it's been such an incredible journey. And what I've discovered is that every family, every single family, and I'm talking thousands, is so unique. It's like I feel like I'm a detective, just like going in and learning about who is this unique baby and who is this unique parent and the other unique parent, and what are the things they're saying and not saying, and what are they feeling, and what are their needs, and what are their fears. And so it's definitely not a one size fits all, and it's certainly not linear when I work with families. And I find it to be very rewarding. And usually they start with coming to me with things aren't working and we want change.
Yeah.
Um, but sometimes they don't really know much more past that. And so the work I do with families is really an exploration and finding out what is it that that they deeply need.
What do you typically hear from families when they call you?
Well, I would say the top comment is this isn't sustainable. Some version of this isn't no longer sustainable. What was working is no longer working. And we haven't, and many families are now especially saying we're feeling overwhelmed by all the information that's out there and we can't quite get one clear answer. And so that's one of the things I hear. And then there's
Uh-huh.
also usually a smattering of baby used to sleep like this, and now our baby's sleeping like this, and we don't know what changed and why. And another thing, which maybe we'll talk about a little bit later, is there's also this uptick in parents feeling they have to reach a certain milestone at a certain age, or else they're doing it wrong, or they're not living up to the same standard of the parent next door to them or the family that they sit with in a parents group. So there's a little
Uh-huh.
bit of like they feel like they're not doing it right on some
Yeah.
level that I get to work with them on to help them settle into and really understand they're doing everything quite beautifully. Um,
Yeah.
and they're doing it in their own unique way.
Yeah. I mean, those are like the kinds of themes that people will come to you with. And then those translate into the goals. You mentioned
Yeah.
you work with people to figure out like what their goals are and that you feel
Yeah.
a bit like a detective and understanding sort of, okay, given your goals, how do we get there? And
Yeah.
one of the conversations you and I had prior to the recording when we were doing our prep, we talked about this concept of the ghost in the nursery.
Yeah. Yeah. That's something certainly I don't think a lot of books talk about or articles bring up. It's not certainly not something that a lot of parents are aware of, but on some level, they sense something's there. So, ghosts in the nursery is something I learned from Dr. Millette, and it's this notion that not this notion, it's this reality that when we become parents, we bring with us everything from our own babyhood, upbringing, childhood, whether
Yeah.
that's incredible strengths around bonding and attachment and love and intimacy, or whether it's, spaces of feeling left or abandoned or sad or afraid. And so we call them ghosts in the nursery because they're there. They're always there. And so when families come to me and we start to explore sleep learning, which we can talk about in a little bit, some people call it sleep training. Um, Usually it brings up these feelings and these thoughts, and parents whisper them, or sometimes they don't say them. And then we start to actually bring them to the surface. And it often has to do with as they explore and discover this idea of helping their baby learn to sleep, which, by the way, is the very first separation most parents make from their baby. And so it's a really big step to take, is the idea of sleeping separately from their baby or having their baby learn something separate from the parent. And so that naturally brings up fears or things that they want to explore and say out loud so that they can release them. So, for example, I was working with a mom a few months ago, and as we got to talking, she let me know that when she was 2, her mother left. And so that, of course, had a huge impact on her and her relationships. And now, as we were talking, as she was thinking about the idea of sleep learning with her 6-month-old daughter, she was really afraid. And what she started talking about is what is my daughter's experience going to be? Will she feel abandoned if she's learning to sleep and I'm not right there with her? And so the first thing, of course, we talked about is, well, does that have to be the picture? Do you have to not be there? Can you actually be there while she's learning? So we crafted something that was unique to this mom that settled that part in her that was nervous and allowed her to deeply trust the process because her daughter was regulating to her. And so this idea of learning about how to help your baby learn to sleep, there's so much more that goes into it than just like crafting a plan on a piece of paper and following through with it. There's all these things to tend to.
Yeah, so feelings and emotions come up from one's own experience, right? Maybe even
Yeah,
subconsciously.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And going back to the point you made earlier about conflicting information, your experience personally, I'm sure you see it, you hear it from your clients too, like they're just overwhelmed with the amount
Yeah.
of information. If you
Yeah.
go on a search
Yeah.
for something, I mean, what tends to happen? You can find conflicting advice or information from sources you don't necessarily know where it came from or trust.
That's right. And that's the difficult thing about, I think, parenting these days. I often will say to parents, like, the internet is such a great resource, and it's also such a horrible resource. It's just like
Yeah.
everything is there. But be very mindful of what you read and what is it backed by? Is it actually backed by evidence and research, or is it an opinion that sounds like something that's sort of formal? And so it's really important that parents be cautious about how much they are on social media or exploring and what sources they're going to for their information. Because honestly, there's so much conflicting information out there, which only increases a parent's overwhelm instead of calms them. And
Uh-huh.
so that's why it's so important that there's research behind any article, any book, anything they read, any blog, that there's research behind it that parents feel like they can settle into. Yeah.
Yeah. I like to say technology can be your best friend if you know how to use it, and
Yes. It's good.
reinforce this idea of looking at your sources. You can go to the AAP, right? American
Yeah.
Association of Pediatrics. You can go to these good sources and
Yeah.
know that you're getting good information, rather than
Right.
going on a comment board, which I highly discourage for anything that's serious advice.
That's right.
Um,
Absolutely.
all right,
Yeah.
so let's switch gears here. I want to talk a little bit about um, sleep training. What is it? Let's talk about what it is and what it
Yeah.
is not.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so I've recently, I would say in the past few years, kind of pulled away from this term sleep training because it just doesn't match what I see parents doing. I really actually see it more like sleep learning because sleep is for many babies a learned skill. It doesn't come naturally for all of us. Sleep training somehow sort of indicates this like one direction. Um, some sort of a I'm doing this to my baby instead of we're together doing this. So I might use them interchangeably in this conversation, but sleep learning feels so much more authentic to what actually happens. I don't believe that babies need to be trained to do anything or not do anything. It's really a relationship that's happening as a baby is learning something. So that's the first thing. But the definition of sleep learning or sleep training is really just this umbrella term for how do we help babies move from reliance on their parents or other modalities like a swaddle or a pacifier or a moving crib like a snoo to independent sleep. So it's really about the process of helping a baby learn to sleep independently. whether that's done in a very gentle, careful, thoughtful way when they're quite young, or whether that's done in a much more accelerated way when they're older and developmentally farther along. Sleep learning is just that process, right? And there's a huge spectrum. There's low cry, which is very, very gentle and slow moving and incremental. It's perfect for babies who have health concerns where a cry it out process would not be a good idea for them. It's great for families who do not wish to do any sort of cry it out process. It's great for infants and newborns who are not there developmentally to know how to self-soothe. So there's low cry options. And then there are a number of what's called cry it out options. And cry it out has a stigma attached to it for a variety of reasons, which I'll discuss later. But cry it out is a process that's much more accelerated. And it's really only useful for families whose babies are developmentally able to self-soothe and ready to learn, which is typically 6 months and older. So there's a number of different cry it out options. And I'll say right now, some of them I support and use, and others I absolutely do not. And so when families hear the idea cry it out, it's not just one way to do it. So they want to get really informed and educated about which is the method that they're learning about. And does that align with their parenting philosophies and their values? Does that match their baby's needs? Like, it's really important to have a lot of exploration in this process of sleep learning.
And isn't the physical development of the baby themselves, not just the ability to self-soothe, but their stomach size and their ability to actually
Yeah.
to physically sleep for certain lengths, that is a factor as well, I understand.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So sleep learning is a baby being able to put themselves to sleep at bedtime or a nap time, and then in the night resettle themselves when they wake out of a habit. When they wake out of hunger, I don't subscribe to cry it out to get them to go back to sleep. I strongly believe they need to be tended to. So physiologically, if they are still at an age where they need a feed in the night, which for many babies is true until 8 to 10 months of age, they still need feeds at night, despite what parents may read. So yes, responding with feeds when needed at night and responding with sleep learning at night when we know they're healthy, they're developmentally far enough along, is a strong, secure attachment that's been established with the family so the baby can move through the process of sleep learning.
Right.
And there's all these factors that are so important to know about and for parents to be educated about if they're going to decide to do this.
So what's the decision-making framework that you like to use?
Yeah. So first of all, it's a co-creating process that I do with families. I certainly never come in and say, this is what you should do and this is what you have to do. And this is the way to do it. We do it together. The factors that I would say are really important to know are how, so this is much more thorough than one might read in an article or a book, but how was the pregnancy? What was the process of getting pregnant? Was it stressful? Was it easeful? What about the pregnancy? How is the postpartum period? How's the attachment going? Is mom in some postpartum depression and having a hard time connecting and attaching? Is she experiencing postpartum anxiety? Does she have support or not? So really looking at prior to the birth, and then shortly after. Those are important pieces to look at. Are the parents working? Is one out of the home? Are both in the home? Are both needing to go back to work? That piece is important. What is the temperament of the baby? Are they highly, highly alert, sensitive babies? Is there any health concerns to know about? How are they feeding is a piece that's really important because I don't typically recommend starting sleep learning unless feeds are established and the baby is healthy and developing and gaining weight beautifully and all of those pieces. And then, of course, how old is the baby? How far along are they developmentally? Do they know how to self-soothe? If we were to start some sleep learning, do they know what to do? Would they be able to turn to self-soothing techniques to learn? And then ghosts in the nursery. Well, how are the parents feeling? What are their needs? What are their fears? A lot of times, one parent feels ready, one parent doesn't. So that becomes the conversation as well. And so those are all the factors, I would say, and there's probably more that we explore. Ultimately, what's important is that each parent, each couple, if it's a couple, get witnessed and honored and heard so that then they can discover what is their knowing and their intuition. And that's when we make the plan.
Yeah. And so much of what you just listed is about the parents and the environment and the situation.
That's right.
I mean, they're baby factors too, but it's more
Yeah.
encompassing of all those things.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
we touched on cry it out being sort of a hot topic, but it seems like you've probably been exposed to a number of circles where, sleep training just comes up as this hot button issue.
Yeah.
Like, what have you learned over the years? Like, why is this?
Yeah. I think there's so many factors there, like what I've learned is that um, what's important is that when a parent or a couple can tap into really getting clear on what their knowing is, what their intuition tells them, then the answers will come. And that's not from a book necessarily. May not be from somebody in a parents group. It certainly isn't from some sort of a fear-based, you should or you shouldn't do this. And so what I've learned is, yeah, there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of opinions. There's a lot of camps. Naturally, there's camps with everything. Um, but can you tap into your knowing as a parent and what is important for you as a parent? And then we go from there. And so that's what I've learned over the years is to like help them learn to quiet the noise and then get educated about each method and the pros and the cons and how that will impact everybody. And then we make the plan. So I would say that's the most important thing as a parent in general, not just with a baby or not just with learning about sleep, is like all the way through till I guess they're 40 or 50. How do we continue to tap into our knowing and our intuition as parents around what we know is true about our family and our little ones?
Hmm. Yeah, you can't
Yeah,
read that in a book. It has to come from your inner self and your inner voice. And
that's
then
right.
marrying that together with evidence-based information to the earlier point,
Yes.
right? With information from good sources. So if those two are in alignment, that's really, really beneficial.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we talked about your approach a little bit in terms of the framework. Anything else you'd want to add about what your approach looks like and why?
Yeah. Well, I would say what I certainly wanted when I was a new mom and what I hear a lot of the families I work with appreciate most is the judgment-free, the shame-free approach that soothes them. This is like a parent-centered and a baby-centered approach as opposed to like me telling them what they should do. And it's balanced. There's no like you. There's one way to do this. We can craft something that feels really balanced for a family. Um, and I get a lot of parents saying like, "I know I shouldn't co-sleep, but." Or I know I shouldn't use a pacifier, but. And so my response is always, says who? Says who? Who said you
Yeah.
shouldn't do that? Like, where's that from? And
Yeah.
if it's working for you, why wouldn't you do it? If it's allowing everybody to sleep and restore, great. If it ain't broke, why fix it? But if it is impacting somebody, then let's talk about that. Like for example, a lot of times parents will say, we didn't plan on co-sleeping. But then it just seemed like the right thing to do or was the easiest thing to do, or we love it, or it was our default. But now one parent's on the couch and I'm in the bed with the baby and it's actually not working for us anymore. So it's always like just keep the conversation going. It might work for one parent or it might work for some period of time, but then it doesn't anymore. And so then it's always this moving conversation of how do we shift things to continue to fit what we need as a family.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And, you've worked with so many families and it sounds like you mentioned a couple of times that maybe that's a common dynamic, right? With one parent
Yeah.
ready and the other not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I would say, I mean, we can talk about the specifics of sleep training, but the real conversation is, how's everybody doing?
Yeah.
How are you as parents doing? What do you need to say? A lot of times when I start, whether I'm teaching a class or having a conversation with a family, I'll start to talk about sleep training or sleep learning, and one parent will tear up. They'll just start to
Yeah.
tear up. And I always say, like, oh, okay, this is so normal, so natural. We're wired to like knock through a brick wall to get to our babies. And some sleep learning practices say, like, give them some space, give them a little bit of time to be in there working through it and learning before you go in and check on them. And so it goes against that. And so the parents will tear up. And so the conversation becomes like, okay, you're ready. You're not so sure you're ready. Let's talk about this. What's getting in the way? Why do you want to start? Why don't you want to start? What would this look like? I can say for me as a new mom, when we considered doing some sleep learning with our oldest, I was a parent who had a need for a lot of control. And the idea of not going in and checking on my daughter when she was crying and learning to sleep was so hard to imagine. But I also knew I was really anxious. And so if I were to go in as an anxious mom and check on her, it wasn't going to soothe her. And so I had to know my husband was going to, who was a very calm person, he was a very trusting person, he was very ready. He had to say to me, I got this. I'm ready. I can do this.
Yeah.
You can be right there on the couch and I will tell you everything I see, everything I feel in there, but like, you got to trust me. And so I did. And for a lot of parents, that's ultimately what happens is one parent has to say, like, I got this. And actually, the truth is, the parent who does the sleep learning process, it's like they finally have a role. They finally have a way to, not finally, but it's like it is an important piece that they get to step into. And the other parent gets to move back and tend to themselves, which very
Mhm.
typically is the primary, like the breastfeeding or the primary caregiving parent is the one that moves back. And then the other parent moves forward and does the sleep learning process. And it's a way for a family to actually come together in a really beautiful way.
Yeah. And you probably work with single parents as well, navigating these challenges.
Oh, yeah. I mean, single parents are a very unique population that I don't think there's enough conversation about, to be honest, whether it's with newborns, babies, or with teenagers, to be honest. I've been a single parent for many, many years. And for a lot of single parents, they worked really hard
Yeah.
just to get pregnant. I mean, just to get to the starting line of having their baby. And so there's a lot of work that gets put into, and a lot of thought, and a lot of intention that gets put into welcoming their baby. And then they have their baby, and there's a lot of visitors, and there's a lot of activity, and there's a lot of support. And then at some point, that starts to wane naturally. And the sleep deprivation starts to stack up. And they're holding the role of two parents. They're holding the decision making of what should be two people typically. And so there's just a lot they're holding. And so when I work with single parents, the conversation becomes like, who can you pull in? Whether it's a call you make or an actual person that is there. Who are your resources? How are you doing? What is needed? And really giving them permission to tend to themselves. It's okay to want sleep and want rest and want to have your baby sleep and rest. So it's a different kind of conversation with single parents that requires just a little bit more tending to their community, helping them pull in. I can remember I worked with one, I'll never forget. I did a home visit in San Francisco with a Google executive. She was like type A, very, very successful. And she called and said, my baby literally hasn't slept and I don't know what to do. I need to work. I need to think clearly. I need to get back to my job. And she was very linear. And so I showed up and her cute little redhead girl baby was just not sleeping. And so we wrapped her in a swaddle. She was clearly a little frazzled. We wrapped the baby in the swaddle and I sat down. I said, would you like me to hold her? Yes. So I was holding her baby and we just started talking. We didn't even talk about sleep, I think, for the first hour. We talked about helplessness. We talked about grief. We talked about the losses she was feeling as she stepped into single parenthood. We talked about anger. I gave her permission to say, I feel really angry. I feel really in love. I feel really lost. I feel really out of control. We just talked, and her baby started to fall asleep. And at the end of the 2-hour visit, her baby was asleep, and we laid her into her sleep space, and I gave this mom a hug and left. And about halfway home, I pulled over and saw a text, and this mom said, she's still sleeping. What do I do? And I was like, you get in the bath, you read People magazine, you stretch. I don't care. You do you. And it really highlighted that there's so much grief that goes into this transition. There's so much that goes into this transition. And it's on us to know that regulating ourselves, crying, grieving, resting, all of that actually is what permission to sleep, permission to want to sleep is what helps our babies regulate. And there's all this incredible research around how we regulate is how our babies regulate. Co-regulation is real for babies. And so that was one example. I'll never forget this mom who had a lot of control in her life, but then this little being came along and flipped it all around, and she had to really drop into, okay, what is the practice now? You know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, and having conversations like that story you just told could be some of the ways that you help parents prepare for a big change.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, the preparation, I would say, is like 75% of a whole sleep learning process. I would say 25% is like the logistics of it and like, customizing and tailoring the plan for a family. But so much of it is the parents preparing or the parent preparing. And so a lot of times I'll give homework to families or to a parent around how do you get yourself ready for this? And that's because that's what I did. And it really helped. And so sometimes it's the couple talking about, what do I want you to tell me when our little one is crying in there? For example, if they're doing a cry it out, what do I want to hear you say? What do I want you to remind me of? How do I want you to hold me? Maybe you can remind me to go for a walk around the block or put some beautiful music in my headphones and take a bath. Like, how do we take care of one another while this is happening? Sometimes I'll encourage a parent to write a letter to themselves. Like, what do you need to remember about yourself as a parent when your baby is in there learning to sleep? You're a great mother. You're doing this for an important reason. They're loved. The connection is strong. Like, what do they want to remind themselves? Or write a letter to your baby. What do you want your baby to know? Like, I've had parents do this and send me their letters. I've come across the most beautiful love letters of like, my love is wrapped around you when you're learning to sleep. I'm not far. I'm right there with you. And we're going to wake in the morning and we're going to and snuggle all day. And, just like the most beautiful love letters. And I'll tell you, it is that prepares a parent. There's so much to the preparations that are really important to do something like this separation. You know?
I love the idea of creating a narrative around it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
What do you want them to know? And then I'll say, tell your baby this story. Talk to them for days before you start. Tell them all about it. And I tell you, more times than not, that baby just there's something that shifts and they begin to learn. Because they don't know what our words mean, but boy, do they feel our energy.
Yeah. Remind me, when is the right time to start sleep training or sleep learning? What age?
Well, so assuming the baby is healthy, assuming there's a strong bond and attachment, assuming all those core pieces are in place, usually a baby is developmentally able to self-soothe, meaning they can use their hands for comfort, they can roll and find comfortable sleep positions, usually by 6 months or older.
Yeah. And the low cry is, you're always, and in either method, I want to reinforce that you said you're still, if they're waking for feeds, You're still
Oh, yeah.
tending to those needs. It's never ignoring physical needs.
No, not at all. No, it's about helping them learn to sleep when, so when they're waking from hunger, when they're waking from pain, if they've got teeth coming in or if they have a cold, that is not a time to do a cry it out. If they're hungry, you tend to them with a feed. A lot of parents believe my baby should be sleeping through the night without a feed by fill in the blank, 3 months, 4 months. And often I spend my time in conversation with parents saying, well, let's look at all the information. Let's look at how
Yeah.
your baby is gaining weight. What are they eating? And then I level set their expectations and say, actually, they're still needing feeds right now. It's perfectly normal for them to want to eat. And I've seen so many parents sit back in their chairs and go, really? Oh, okay. I thought I was doing it wrong. Like, no, 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 no. Their bellies are tiny. They need to be refilled multiple times at night. It is okay to feed them. So a lot of times it's really looking at the bigger picture for parents to understand what's realistic to expect of their baby.
Yeah. And it's easy to understand why parents can get these ideas because there are so many misleading books, book titles, headlines, maybe
Yes.
stories from relatives who may or may not even be recollecting correctly
Oh,
their own
yeah.
experiences. And so I really appreciate you making the point of let's look at the evidence and let's look at your unique situation because those are
That's right.
factors.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what about multi-generational households? What have you learned about that?
Yeah. Well, that's really common and it's complex. A lot of times, sleep practices, they really vary across cultures. And so that's a really important thing to know and understand. Some cultures really favor and practice co-sleeping or family beds. And other cultures, I would say more often more Western cultures, really emphasize independent sleep or sleeping separately. And so oftentimes, you'll have one generation that's raised in one approach of like family bed or co-sleeping in their country of origin. And then they have a child and they raise them in, let's say, the States, where a lot of times you've got a two-parent household and both parents are working, or there are a lot of demands on those parents. And they are entertaining, needing and wanting their little one, their 8-month-old, to learn to sleep independently. And so there's often a clash culturally of like the grandparents were raised one way and then their child is raising their baby, the grandchild, another way. And so I think what's really important is to educate everybody about how things have changed across the generations. Like 50 years ago, many of us, 60 years ago, many of us lived in communities where our aunts and uncles were next door. Our grandparents were just a few houses over. And when we had babies, everybody chipped in, everybody took care of each other's babies, and you had resources nearby. Now, a lot of times, you've got a two-parent household and grandparents or aunts and uncles aren't nearby. And so what do you do then? So culture has a big impact on decisions around sleep. And so I would say the most important thing is education around how have things changed, and then communication. So I'll often talk to parents about how do you want to talk with your parents, the grandparents, about your decisions? How do you educate them about why you're making this choice? How do you help soothe their concerns? How do you help find something that feels good to everybody? So it's just complex and it's rich and communication. And a lot of parents feel very empowered to do that. Once they understand why there's all this conflict, they begin to see that there's a lot of commonality as well. Yeah,
So you work with everyone in the household.
I do. A lot of times I'll do a home visit or I'll do a virtual call and there's a grandparent and then there's the parents and there's, a nanny and everybody's listening in and everybody has questions and it's great because I love answering all the questions. Oftentimes there's a concern behind the question. So we talk all the way down into the concerns and then everybody
Oh,
breathes easier. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So you've been doing this for a long time. How's the
Yeah.
conversation changed over the years?
Yeah. Well, 15 years is a long time. And I would say I would say sometime in the last 5 to 7 years, I've just seen a huge uptick for parents in like self-blame,
Huh.
unfortunately. Like, I'm doing this wrong, or there must be something wrong. Self-doubt, well, certainly a lot more worry, a lot higher expectations of themselves and their baby. And I have to attribute it to just the increase in information online
Right.
and the lack of regulation online. I mean, you can find anything about anything. Um, and so I think it's directly related to social media and people believing what they read is the truth instead of really diving deep and getting informed in an evidence-based way. Um, and so that's how I've seen it happen, what I've seen shift most in the last number of years. And so I'm on a mission to build parents in first going to their knowing, first going to themselves, first
Mm-hmm.
understanding their unique baby. Their baby is unique from any other baby that's out there. And so, like, what do we know about your baby, though? And so helping them learn about their baby instead of go outwards to sort of explore what should be done out here. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what we're doing on this show right now, right? We're sharing information that is baby and family positive and information that is accurate, information that's coming from
Yes.
you, a credentialed perinatal professional,
Mhm.
right? And this
Yeah.
information, um, by the way, I am going to mention we have an app called Hello Gaia that we created that pulls only from trusted sources, and
Yes.
it's free to use. Just we all know there are enough barriers to getting good information, so information from this conversation and from other
Mm,
credentialed professionals who have been on the program is available there, as well as
great.
from trusted sources. So I appreciate you making this point because you brought it up a few times now, and I couldn't agree with you more, Sarah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so
um,
grateful for this podcast that there's a place to go where parents can feel heard and understood. Yeah.
yeah,
It's great.
wow, and I appreciate all this great information you're sharing with us.
Yeah.
Um, you know, we talked about social media, but books are also one of those
Yeah.
sources we talked about. Especially when they're recommending some kind of fast fix,
That's right.
and they're just not necessarily taking into consideration all these factors that we just talked about.
Yeah. Yeah, there are some books that are out there that suggest something that's not realistic, or they suggest a fast fix, and then parents feel like they need to fit their baby into this schedule. And then when I always ask, "How's that working?" "Well, I don't like it." "Okay."
Yeah,
There are other options, what would feel right? What would feel good? Let me talk about a couple of options, which one feels like the best fit. So, the
yeah,
fast fixes, the you shoulds, your baby should be here by this age, sleeping this many hours by this week. I don't I highly recommend families just be very discerning about what they're reading, what they're hearing from other people, and
yeah,
continue to go to their own home for what do they know to be true.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a competition. I would
No.
say don't compare yourself or your baby to other people. It's not worth it. It's like an extra level of pain and judgment that you're bringing into the situation unnecessarily.
Yeah, I often say comparison. I mean, everybody know that the term a comparison is a thief of joy. It's like
Yeah,
if you're just sitting in a mother's group looking at all the babies who are sleeping and yours isn't, and then you just don't get to drop in and enjoy this little being who loves being awake and loves just being social. Um, so yeah, as hard as it is to drop in and be present as a new parent, there's so much. It's exhausting at times. Comparison is just not gonna support your ability to just really, really drop in. Your baby is who you got. It's who you got.
I love the episode of Bluey. I don't know if you're familiar with that program. It's a really popular cartoon, but
Yeah,
there's an
I
episode
know it.
called Baby Race. Baby Race is coming
Oh
to
my
mind,
god.
where it's like this, the mom sitting in a circle comparing like who's walking first and getting kind of like
Mm-hmm.
competitive about it.
Yeah.
It's natural to do it. I get it. It's like,
Yeah.
you can feel it, but remember this conversation too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what other points do you want to make? I want to give you the opportunity to touch on whatever you like.
Well, what I would say to any parent listening is you're doing great. You're just doing great. There's no
Yeah.
wrong way. There's no bad way. You're doing it your way. I love you. Congratulations. You're raising a human. They're loved. And we're going to get there. You're going to get there. One day you'll have a teenager who tucks you in at night. And
That
you
sounds
can
like it
be,
was spoken from experience.
oh yeah, just last night. You can be angry. You can be in love. You can be exhausted. You can desperately want to sleep. You can have needs. All of this is okay. Sleep learning is not linear. It's not a one size fits all. You will find the solution that feels right for you, and things will shift. And the last thing I would say is if you're one of those parents like myself who really needed structure and control and consistency and predictability, having a baby, we probably talk about this a lot on this podcast, but having a baby flips all that upside down. So settle into chaos and know
Mhm.
there is something you can find in there that will have some semblance of like rest. And I know those sound like opposite things, but it's life as a parent, certainly in the first year. Um, yeah, just yeah, know you're not alone and you're not doing it wrong and you're doing a beautiful job and you're so loved, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Do you have any other final thoughts?
I don't think so. I think that kind of covers it. I mean, they certainly are always welcome to look on your resources on your site. My site has resources as well. Angelique Millette is an incredible resource. So there are resources out there that are supporting families in a really holistic way, if
Yeah.
that's what resonates.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and where can people learn more about you?
Yeah. Well, I have a website, sarahhealysleep.com. And on the website is a resource page for practitioners and articles. I have blogs that are supportive for families just to read about both evidence based, but also just like reminding them that they're not alone. And I also have services and I have on demand classes. So for parents that just want to not get out of their house and they want to sit and watch a newborn sleep class or a baby sleep class or a naps sleep class, I have all that on my website as well. So there's lots available to them. And they can find me on Instagram as well. Same name, same place.
Okay. We'll
Yeah.
put links to all of that on the show notes for this episode.
Yeah, so I want to offer 10% off promo for anybody who listens to this. You can put in the discount code is Fourth, Fourth. So for anyone signs up for a consultation, there's 10% off there for you. And then if you sign up for a class, those are the on-demand classes, I'll offer 50% off for a class. Same code. So if you go to my website and find any of that, you're welcome to use that code.
That's really generous. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciated this conversation. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Sarah.
You can subscribe to this podcast in order to hear more from us. Thank you for listening, everyone, and I hope you'll join us next time on the Fourth Trimester. The theme music on this podcast was created by Sean Trott. Hear more at soundcloud.com/Sean Trott. Special thanks to my true loves, my husband Ben, daughter Penelope, and baby girl Evelyn. Don't forget to share the Fourth Trimester podcast with any new and expecting parents. I'm Sarah Trott. Goodbye for now.
Hello again, bicycle man. I know you're doing all that you can. I wrote the song, simple and true. I wrote the song, I'll sing a song for you. You got your wheels, You got your gears, you ride around town without any fear. You got your pedals, you got your brakes. You always wear your helmet for safety's sake. Hello again, bicycle man. I know you're doing all that you can. I wrote the song, simple and true. I wrote the song, I sing a song for you. Hello again, bicycle man. I know you're doing the best that you can. I wrote the song, simple and true. I wrote the song, I sing a song for you.